Hey everyone, this is pretty terrific, and as usual, I'm Chris.
Hi, I'm Marie.
And
Oh, wait.
we have another guy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Guys, it's Dave. It's Cave Dar from work, but you might know him also as Dave, our one listener.
Ugh, it's Dave from work.
Yeah.
Dave from
How did
work.
he get here?
Welcome aboard, Dave from Not My Work. Yeah, it's great to
Guys,
have you on again.
Yay. I mean, we Dave's here for a very, very specific reason. So, in the spirit of things that are pretty terrific, Chris and I have been talking pretty extensively in our not this podcast lives about how terrific the new Zelda game is, Tears of the Kingdom. And here with an opinion that is contrary, as is Dave's nature, and as far as I'm concerned, fake and not real, because how could it possibly be? But it is very brave of you to share with us. Is a counterpoint from Dave about whether or not Tears of the Kingdom is a terrific Zelda game.
Well, I like how we're jumping in without even saying what
Yeah,
we like
no.
about it. It's
No,
um
let's go with what we don't like, because I think universally love. Terrific. So fun. Having a great time. How about you, Chris?
I am also enjoying it quite a bit. It is what's getting to me right now is the intense density of the game. There is just so much to do everywhere
There's
you
so
turn.
much. I literally have said that to myself out loud. There is so much game. But anywho, Cave, welcome.
Yeah, you
yeah,
Let's hear it.
do some drinking because you got some talking to do, buddy. Let's hear what
Yeah.
you're thinking.
yeah. Okay, well, yeah. Maybe we should say that I'm gonna reference things specifically, so maybe we should say spoilers abound.
Okay,
Um,
spoilers.
just to, just in case people still care. I was very spoiler phobic before. Like I don't watch any trailers or anything before. Yeah. All right. So preface a few things. I'm not a Zelda fan. I'm like a Zelda fan boy. Like I'm as Zelda fan as it gets. I played the first Zelda. Just like I replayed it just to get ready for this one. Like that's the level I'm on. And yeah, Ocarina of Time got me into video games. I was like Sega Genesis, that was my brother's system, but then I got an N64 for Christmas and the Ocarina of Time, and it was just like,
Yeah, I got a
okay,
quick question for you there though. On the so you replayed the
yeah,
original. How did you play the original? What device did you use?
I did it on the virtual
The Switch
what's it
Online
virtual
dealie.
system on Switch
Cool,
Online,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry, but keep going.
Which thank God I cannot imagine playing that game like on the original Nintendo without save states and save scumming because holy shit, you guys. the, the last third of that game, if you didn't have emulating save states, would be controller breakingly frustrating. Jesus. Um, yeah. So I love Zelda a lot, and like people who like know me like in the game realm, like that's like one of the things I talk about all the time, constantly. Yes, yeah. So, not a hater, not a hater. So my opening statement would be that Tears of the Kingdom is a good and enjoyable game. It is
Okay, that's the
not a
show.
good, but it's not a good Zelda game. It's not a good Zelda game, and I think that when the honeymoon period um, wears off in a couple years and people take a more analytic approach to it, it will not get the 10 out of 10s that it's getting right now.
See, that's an
So,
interesting take because how do you feel about? We have to get into why you think that, but Breath of the Wild. What were your feelings on Breath of the Wild, which came out
Hmm.
6 years ago?
yeah. Same. I would say it's a good game. It is not a good Zelda game. And I think if you're being totally neutral, it would be a 8 out of 10 experience.
Okay, so
And I would say Tears of the Kingdom is better. I'd say maybe like a 8.5 out of 10. Yeah.
So do you feel that the luster has worn off of Breath of the Wild over the years? Because it's been 6 years since, and in my estimation, it's still been a pretty well-regarded game. Like, people are like,
Yeah,
well,
that's a good game.
that was a tentpole release, like, and it has been, video games is before that and after that, and like that was a big deal. Like, do you think maybe with a more critical eye, people would not like it so much now?
Oh yeah, and like I mean that's like there's several super cool, not at all nerdy long form essayists who specialize in video games. And like even at release, there were many nits to pick on Breath of the Wild. So
Yeah, I mean it's a
yeah.
massive game, and there's a lot of it's different, right? It is absolutely
Mhm.
different. Although I want to know what's different. What makes it not a Zelda game to you?
Wait, can I just here. I want to put this out there right now on because I feel
Uh-huh.
very strongly Ship of Theseus on this. Are we all familiar with
Uh-huh.
this? Okay.
Yeah.
Zelda is an IP, right? Like Zelda
Mhm.
games. And you know what? Some of the boards fall off and then we replace them with better boards. Maybe the ship becomes, metal and steel. It's still Zelda. And the creators of Zelda have created Zelda games. And this is what they've made. It is, by definition, to me, a Zelda game. Is that okay? Am I just way off base?
I mean,
Well, I mean, oh god, this is just a whole like is Hyrule Warriors a Zelda game? Like
Yes.
it's Zelda IP. It's on Nintendo, but it was made by a different developer than all the mainline Zelda games. Or like, is Minish Cap a Zelda game because it was made by Capcom? It wasn't even made by Nintendo, but it's
yeah.
Zelda IP. Is that a Zelda game?
You could say similar things about Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons, both also made by
Yeah.
Capcom.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. First, my taste buds refresh every 7 years, and sometimes with it, the taste that I enjoy. Is it not still my tongue?
Well, the thing is, I think the problem with that argument is that these are new works. It's not like they're remaking the same game over and over again, right?
Fair. Okay.
And if,
okay.
Which I could argue that you could say with all the HD remasters happening now, like, is this the same game? That's the Ship of Theseus thing. Like, well, it's the same game. Like, Resident Evil 4, I think, is a great topic for that because they replaced everything but used the bones. But these are new entries in a series, and I would argue that it is still the Zelda series. It just has evolved. And a lot of people said similar things about Ocarina of Time when it came out. Ocarina of Time came out, and it was radically different than A Link to the Past in feel and look and everything.
Just two things, and then I will shut up and let you guys Nintendo fanboy it out. But was Fallout New Vegas a Fallout game?
It depends on who you ask. Like
okay, and then the new oh my god, it's like my favorite Wolfenstein games. Are they Wolfenstein?
I would say that I would say that some people would say that New Vegas is a more Fallout game than like Fallout 4 or 76. And I think there's a strong argument to be made there. Yeah.
Okay, and then the Wolfenstein, the New Order.
I think there's an argument to be made that they have deviated quite heavily from the DNA of that franchise too. But then, like, the Wolfenstein franchise in the beginning was like so bare bones.
But it was it was so good. Yeah. I loved old Wolfenstein. Yeah. That's the first person shooter I played.
Sure.
And I still go back to it. I'm like, this is still fun. It's still hard. It's still got something to it, and I do feel like some of that's lost with the newer ones. And that I'm talking Return to Castle Wolfenstein, like the first 3D one, and but it's still Wolfenstein. Like, it is a progression of the series, right?
Yeah, and I think that evolution is natural as technology and tastes and even the creators change behind it. That's all I wanted to put out there. But because I thought the New Order, I cried during that game. It was one of my favorite games of all time. And I enjoyed the original Wolfenstein and like all along. And to me, it felt like the right Wolfenstein for the time.
I feel like that game simply didn't have enough pushing on random walls. And if you're not pushing against every single wall in a Wolfenstein game, it's not a Wolfenstein game, right?
Okay. Okay.
And it makes that farting noise everywhere. You got to have the farting noise on the wall.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a lot of different conversations kind of happening at once, because it's like one conversation is, did they deviate from like the core DNA of the series or previous series? Another conversation is like, well, did I like the deviation? And then a third one is like, is the deviation a good thing? You know, because like all of these things like happen in interesting combinations, and none of them are mutually exclusive, right? So like, if the core DNA has changed and you like it and you think it's a good thing, then you will probably argue like, yes, this is good and right and natural. But if you don't have the three combinations, like all three of those together, then of course you're gonna feel differently.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of trying to argue that that the core DNA has changed. It's still fun, and it is bad that it has changed.
I think those are three great questions, right? Like, that is a great breaking down, because yeah, there is a lot going on here. It's a very complex subject. But I would also argue, as things evolve, the old things are gone. Like, you don't, unless you have a revitalization, like it's not, those pieces still exist. You can still go back and play Ocarina of Time. You can play Twilight Princess. In fact, you can play them in more ways than ever before now, but they're not going to make another game like that. It's going to be something new going forward. And long-running series, this is a continuing thing. Like, I love, you're a Nintendo fanboy, perhaps. Mario. Mm-hmm. Mario has changed so much from the early days. I love every one of the games, some more than others. I think Sunshine's kind of trash. But I would play 64 all day long. Still love 64. But the 2Ds, they're is it still a Mario game? But 2D and 3D Mario, they feel like completely different games.
Is Mario Kart a Mario game?
Mario Kart is a spin-off that has become its own genre, I would argue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to, or else Mario Tennis and Dr. Mario and like, yeah.
Oh, Dr. Mario.
So the reason I think that it is particularly bad, like we can talk about the deviations later, but the reason I think it's particularly bad is that even though the classic Zelda formula is popular, not many people, I would argue almost no one is doing it and glomming on, right? Like if you like first person Call of Duty, like you're in luck, because there are a million games that want to give you the exact same experience as that game is. So it's like if all of the Call of Duty just disappears off the planet, like you're still in luck. Whereas with Zelda, if the Zelda team stops making that classic experience, well, then you're foobarred, because like, what have you got? Like there are imitators, but I could like go down the list of imitators and say like, okay, here's how they changed and the negative consequences of that. Which is why Tears of the Kingdom is simultaneously fun and depressing, because Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom sold so amazingly well. Nintendo would be stupid not to do it, third time, one more time with feeling. So you know that they're not going to go back to the classic stuff. And like, then you start to like you get the I'm olds, and you're like, oh man, when was the last good mainline Zelda game? And it's like Twilight Princess, and you're like, holy shit, that's like, I think it's 17 years old. Like I looked it up the other day, and you're like, oh my god, they haven't made the thing I like in 17 years. like kids are in college that have never had a good Zelda game come out in their lifetime. Oh my god, that's so depressing. So that is why I think it's bad.
What's interesting, so you feel that no other studio is pulling that like classic Zelda-esque, like that genre doesn't exist anymore, is what you're saying, right?
And can you define it? How would you define that classic Zelda experience in your mind?
Yeah, I would say it is it has to be a tailor-made experience. So anything that's rogue or roguelike is out. So like Cult of the Lamb, roguelike, out. It has to have themed dungeons, temples, or whatever that have at least a boss, maybe a mini boss, but I'll say at least a special boss and item-based gated progression. It should have puzzles and combat, probably like in equal measure. So like those are like the mechanical things I would say that it needs. But then like the more touchy-feely stuff is also about exploration, and there's kind of like a feeling that's kind of special. Like you need like a kind of mystical feeling. Genre-wise, I would say also has to be fantasy, right? Like if they made a steampunk Zelda, like it could be fun, but it would feel different, right? Like it'd be weird. So then like the feeling part I think is important too.
Yeah. I would say out of the things you mentioned though, the only questionable one for Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom would be the themed dungeons, right? I think it hits all those other points.
There's plenty of exploration.
Themed. That's the thing is like it does a lot of things really well, but like I think the themed dungeon and item-based progression is super important.
Item-based progression. Okay.
Like if you find an item in like, okay, I'll do Ocarina of Time. Find the Megaton hammer, right? Which is functionally, technically, it's the same as like any other hammer in Tears of the Kingdom, right? Like you make a million of them. They do exactly the same thing, and they do more than the Megaton hammer, which is like basically almost useless in the game. But even though mechanically they're the same, there's a difference between finding like an ancient arcane artifact in the bowels of a volcano and I glued a rock to a stick, right? Like they are experientially different, you know? And it is cooler to find secret arcane items in the bowels of a volcano than gluing rocks to sticks.
That seems like opinion. What? And there are still items that you can discover throughout the world. You know, I've definitely come across like really unusual and cool combination items. I was telling Chris the other day, I fought an enemy and they dropped their long stick, and I was delighted, which was like two long sticks that had been fused together, and that was a delightful sense of discovery for me.
Right, and that's a delightful alternative, but it is not the same, I would say.
Yeah, I would, I think you're right, and this is like almost emergent. It's like emergent items that you find. There are now. I do get that. I understand what you're saying, but I get that itch scratched in the game by things like there are legendary mounts that you find in the game. Like, you found Princess Zelda's horse, which is a giant golden horse. And there's only one in the game, and you found it, and you can, befriend it. But it's not the same. I understand. That's certainly not the same. Yeah, wait. Now you're just like, I want a giant golden horse.
I do.
And I guess a lot of that comes into play also with the armor sets, right? The clothing. That's kind of one-of-a-kind things that sometimes you have to go through a very specific quest to get. And then, okay, I got this really cool armor. And by the way, it helps me swim up waterfalls. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yes. Quick aside to Chris. I rode one of those skeleton horses, and it was fantastic. Thank you.
I'm glad that worked out for you.
Thanks.
Yeah, so like I do like the armor, and that's probably like so far my favorite thing in the game is that's the most rewarding thing is finding the armor. It's less rewarding finding doing a quest, finding the big Goron sword, and you're like, oh fuck, great, this is awesome. And like for the super nerds, the special thing about the big Goron sword in Ocarina of Time is it doesn't break. So I'm like, oh, maybe this will break. Like maybe this is finally a decent weapon that won't break. Guess what? It breaks. Yeah. I was like, I bet you this fucking game is gonna break this sword. So I Googled it because I'd be shattered if it didn't. So now I have a good sword that breaks that I don't want to use, because then it'll break. So it doesn't become like it's not the big Goron sword. It's just the same as any other whatever power 30 sword with the big Goron skin. They feel different.
That makes sense. I get that, and I know there's a whole other conversation about degrading weapons, and that's, I know, probably the most divisive thing about these games is that system. And I enjoy that system because it makes me break some of my own personal habits. I am a hoarder in games. Like, I will try to, oh, I got this awesome item, I'm going to save it for a really special time. That special time never comes. It never comes. Yeah. The last boss, I'm like, oh, what if he has another final form? What if there's something I got to save this, like, mega elixir for? I'm holding on to it, and then credits roll. I'm like, well, dang. But Zelda, I'm like, wait. All these things are going to break. I'm going to use the best thing and kill this guy with my, 30 sword. And it forces me, like, to scramble in the middle of a battle sometimes. And it can be frustrating, but at the same time, it's different, right? Absolutely, it's different. It's a different type of gameplay, but I enjoy that gameplay. And I like that it forces me out of my comfort zone,
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I think you're saying the same thing. I think the game is good. I'm enjoying the game. I just think it's different in a critical way. That changes like the experience. The other thing, like maybe the more controversial thing, is like those really cool YouTube videos I was talking about. There's a lot of hullabaloo about like freedom and player agency and non-linearity, and I think that those have been given too much attention and have been detrimental to the game. So like I think a better game would have resulted in a more linear, curated experience rather than the solve this problem any way you want, get there any way you want sort of game. So I have a couple examples. Okay, so I was in a cave. It was a really long cave. It kept going. I was like, oh, cool. What is down here? Like maybe it's a secret dungeon or something. Got to the end, like fought a guy, and then like popped up in the ceiling. Like the ceiling was like very obviously saying like, hey, ascend through the ceiling, right? So I ascended through the ceiling, and it popped me up at the very end of one of the big labyrinth things.
Oh.
So I was like, okay, here I am. I did it. So I like did all the labyrinth things, then I like exited and I went through the labyrinth backwards because I was like, well, it's here, I should enjoy it, I guess. And then when I got to the beginning, like the opening of the labyrinth, there's like a little book and a guy who said he's going in there and he's leaving a breadcrumb thing. And I'm like, oh, wow, this would have been a much superior experience than doing it the way that I did it, right? But I can't do it again.
Yeah.
It's already, the experience is used up. So like allowing me to stumble across the game in this nonlinear fashion is decreasing on average the amount of fun I would have. It's like saying we don't really have, like, if the developer was very confident in their ability to make the most fun experience and be prescriptive about it, like, then they would do a linear game. But like if they want to do something the other way, like, oh, you can circumvent all this stuff, to me it kind of almost feels like a lack of confidence. Like, oh, well, like we don't know that we can make the most fun experience, so we're just like gonna let you go do it yourself or whatever. But that's just like one circumstance. There's tons of times where I'm just doing stuff that I think you're supposed to be doing, like riding around on a glider because there's gliders everywhere. So, okay, the developers want me to use them. And then I'll just like cut through huge swaths of content that I probably would have enjoyed more because of this, like, non-linearity. So I think it's super detrimental.
That's fascinating.
To the
game. This is basically an argument against open world games at large, right? Like freedom games.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I had a professor of Chinese philosophy, and he used to always say that choice is bad when it came to like everything, basically, like our exams, etc. So you're sort of in line with his perspective that choice is bad. I get it.
And I think there's an argument. It's a different, like I said, it's totally different. And that example of you popping up at the end of a labyrinth, is a fantastic one, because you're right. Like, that's spoiled for you. You can't go back and enjoy that again. My counterpoint to that would be yes, but you say for you that balance, there's so much that was ruined. More was ruined than you enjoyed. For me, the balance is drastically the other direction. Like, there is more delightful stuff at every turn that when I do like break something, I'm like, oh, that was a weird one-off. Okay, let's just keep going, because there's just so much.
There is so much content. And I know exactly the labyrinth that you're talking about, where he left the nuts and there are books along the way. And I can see how if you had progressed linearly, you would have like read his passages and seen that. But to me, it sounds really thrilling that you got to go the reverse way. And because it seems sort of like life, right? We don't always come at it in the correct way. And that's sort of fun and exciting.
To me, it is a cancer on the game because it's totally immersion breaking. Like, you can't because once it happens that critically bad, like, you can't lose yourself to the game and forget that you're playing a game, because you have to constantly, if you want to have a good experience, you have to constantly be thinking, am I going to ruin the game for myself if I do this? Like, there's I know how to make a hovercraft now. Cool. If I choose to make it, am I going to lose out on the stuff that the game developer, like, I spend so much time trying to understand what the game developer wants me to do to have the actual Zelda experience and not the Minecraft experience, that I can't lose myself in the game. It's almost like having ice cream in the refrigerator and like, it's there, but trying not to eat it, because, like, yeah, I can build like homing missile flying robot things, but like, am I gonna ruin combat for myself? Like, okay, it's there, but I gotta like not use it. Or I can make a car out of, that, like, that's basically free because Zonite's so expensive, and like, I could just like zip through this plane and like not have to deal with any of this stuff. And of course, that's what you want to do, because like, people are impatient. But you also know that that'll be a fundamentally like more shallow experience than going on foot and finding things and talking to the people along the way. So you're constantly like have this. It feels like dieting. Like I don't know, Chris, if we talked about this, but I used to be very heavy, so I had to do extreme dieting for years to get to healthy weight. And it's like that kind of experience playing the game, trying not to ruin it for myself. Well, so that's why I say it's cancerous, because it shows up everywhere in the game.
Well, I want to dig into that idea a little bit, because it sounds like you've been trained your whole life playing video games to like, oh, tell me I'm good. Tell me I'm good. It's like, you gotta, what does the developer want me to do? And I'm trying to figure that out. And I think a game like this, doesn't want you to think about what the developer's doing. It's more about do what you want. Like, what do you want to do? Do you want to spend hours making a mech and then like ride it around shooting laser beams? You can do that. And the developers have given you the tools to be able to do that. Now, that is very different than like a scripted, prescribed narrative. And there's sections of that in the game, but like, I think it's different. It's not, I don't think it's necessarily, in this, you just have to change your mentality. Like, am I looking, what does the developer want me to do? Don't think that, right? That's a cancer in your brain that's been developed for decades, right?
But like, I disagree though, because if you don't think that, then you can ruin yourself on the actual scripted content that is the thing that I'm interested in, right? So if I'm just like, oh, there's a plane, I'm going to fly to the top of the mountain, and then realize that there was actually a very manicured, interesting path to get up there, and you got to sneak past things and like have all these interesting experiences. Like, if you don't think that way, and if you just do what comes naturally, then you lose out on the thing you want. Like, it's like a book,
is it lost?
Right? Yeah.
Can't you just, okay, you're at the top of the mountain, but you can still go back down. And then,
do you remember the Game Shark, when the Game Shark came out?
Yes.
And it's like all of a sudden, like, you could jump to level 100, I felt like that fundamentally cheapened the feeling you get of like max leveling, I don't know, Pokemon or something. Like, because you do it once, you're like, oh, I'm just gonna see what it's like to max level something. And then after you do it, it's just like it just changes the whole experience. Like it changes the context of the whole route to get
No, I
there.
get that. And Marie and I are old enough where for us that was the game Genie, before the game
Yes.
Shark. And there was a debate back then that was, like, is this morally wrong to use this game Genie? It's not like anyone was stealing money or taking money from people to use it, but like it was like, this is breaking games. Like it's straight up breaking games. It's giving you whatever you want, and that makes the game less fun. And just knowing that you can do it, I would argue it does change your like, if you're looking at Pokemon and typically you would spend lots and lots of time leveling your Pokemon, getting the best ones. So perhaps if you're crazy, you're breeding Pokemon, you got a Ditto and you're trying to get the best underlying stats. But if you know that, like, hey, I can use a Game Shark and I can just tweak that number with a text editor, you're like, then life is pointless. What is the point of life, right? And it sounds like that this game kind of brings that feeling out for you a little bit.
Yeah. Or spoiling a book, right? Like if you go and read the last chapter first, there's nothing stopping you from then going to the beginning and then reading through the whole book again, but it's a different experience than you would have had if you didn't know how it ended, right? So like to me, those kind of intangibles are quite important.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying it's a bad game. It's a good game.
Yes.
It's fun.
Even an 8.5.
8.5 is great.
Yeah.
Not Zelda.
It's a fun game, but like I said, it has changed all of these things enough such that the experience I have is like not reminiscent to my favorite type of experience of having.
I mean, I think that's totally fair. It's it's a very subjective thing. This is the experience you prefer. Yeah. It is not providing it like you can't be wrong. You are absolutely right. It is different. It is deeply different. Yeah.
Very brave of you to share this with us.
Are you frustrated, Marie? You look a little pissed.
No, you're absolutely 1000% entitled to, have this expectation of a game and then, to be frustrated with that expectation thwarted, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's fine. I think I'm like in trying to get into the mindset of a Dave where you're thinking about the developer, right? Because you are a game developer and you're like, I want people to approach my own game in such a way, I want a curated experience. And I'm trying to think through all of the motivations and all of like the things that have brought you to where we are today.
Yeah. It's like, well, here, let's change the topic to something a little nerdier, right? Like, here's what I think this game will get crucified for in the future. Menus. If you want to do anything in the game, menu. You want to shoot a special arrow, menu. You want to fuse a weapon, 1 or 2 menus. You want to change your clothes to adapt to the situation, menu. You want to build something you've already built before, menu. Like if you want to cook, multiple menus. Like the game is so tied to menus. Like if you're in a difficult combat and you're trying to be real tricky with like using different environmental effects with arrows and like different weapons that do different things and like trying to really be strategic about it, half of the time you're sorting through menus. Like, okay, like shoot him with the ice choo-choo arrow. Okay, stop, change. Okay, now I'm gonna paralyze this guy. Gotta change again. Oh, I'm in the wrong sword. Like I choose the right sword. Okay, I have a special shield that like blinds people. Like, okay, I gotta do another menu. That's like 7 menu uses in 10 seconds of combat. Is insane. It's insane. And there's no way to like hotkey arrows, right? So like by mid game, you've got 100 bokoblin horns, right?
Oh yeah.
So it's like, why not? Like every time you shoot an arrow, why not use it? Because you're not gonna use it for anything else, right? That means every single arrow you shoot, you have to go into the menu. It's insane.
That is really apparent with the arrow, and especially it's a one-dimensional menu for that particularly, which in the beginning
so you have to,
it's great. But then like now I'm
yeah.
like, why wouldn't you just make it two-dimensional in that moment anyway? Because it's a lot more just something you can understand.
Yeah.
Yes. I have to scroll forever to get to like the bomb flower.
Yeah.
And I feel
And,
like
even
they do have the sort by, and the sort by can be useful. And especially like, I guess as you progress in the game, you want to sort by the most used, and if you're doing errors and stuff. But yeah, no, there's a lot. There's possibly too much there.
Yeah. So I think that's I don't think that will age well. Like I remember people hated the Ocarina of Time water temple because you had to go to the menu to put the iron boots on, right? To go up and down. And like that's a dream compared to any combat.
I would argue people hated
was,
that dungeon because they were lost oftentimes too.
Yeah, you could get soft locked out of the game if you're unlucky.
Yeah.
Which would suck. I'd be pissed about that too. Yeah.
I agree with this one. I agree that the menus are cumbersome, and it does sort of take me out of the game to be in combat and be like, oh, this guy, and especially if it's like a mixture of like I try to lead different groups of enemies, monsters to each other so that they interact, and then I have like different effects that I want to.
Yeah,
it's very challenging.
While we're on like picking nits about the game, pile on the one there's one area that I got very frustrated with, and it's part of the Zora kind of quest, and you go up in the sky and the gravity is different. There's much lower gravity up there, and as every jump goes much higher, much further. And in combat for me, that has been infuriating because every time I sidestep, I like fly all the way to the left and jump into something. I got killed over and over again. I'm like, it's just the physics changed, and it's been very frustrating. I'm like, man, if I could wear those iron boots to go a menu with every step, I think I might be a little less frustrated, actually. Yeah. Yeah. So there's stuff that's not perfect at all.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not like I'm like, yeah, it's a terrific and that's the end of all games. But I felt like you immediately had a very strong reaction to the game not being a Zelda game.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, the creator, I don't know, maybe I give too much credit to creators and what their visions can be and how they evolve. And I feel like, yes, it is a Zelda game because by virtue of it being called a Zelda game.
I have a terrible metaphor that I maybe want to try on you. Okay. Like what's a food that like a restaurant that you love that does something that like no one else can do, right? Like, I don't know. Like, like let's say there's a place that like they make their own. Do you like ice cream? I don't remember.
Do I like ice cream?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Let's say there's a place that like does. Oh, Chris. Shit. Okay. Yeah. let's say. Okay. I know for a fact that Chris's ice cream store like makes a special ice cream that no one else makes, and it's your favorite one. Okay. Like, I don't know, they do birthday cake ice cream with like real something in it, and that's your jam.
Chris would never.
This is a metaphor, so yeah.
Okay.
Keep going.
Yes. Okay. Sorry.
I don't know Chris's ice cream proclivities. Anywho, so like they're the only ones that do the thing you love, right? And then for business reasons, he's like, you know what? Like, just being like a stock standard brew pub, would be better. And so like he takes ice cream off the menu and does brew pub. And like maybe the burgers are good, but they are like, they could even be great burgers. They could be the best burgers. But at the end of the day, it's still not ice cream. Like you still don't have the thing you love, even if it's replaced it with another thing you love, but maybe just not as much.
That's a pretty good metaphor, I think.
That works, yeah. But does Tubby Robot still offer ice cream in addition to the burgers? Because I don't think it's just like entirely gone. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's still ice cream
Or
there's still Zelda in this
maybe there's
game.
ice cream. There's ice cream, but it's only floats, or only malts. They don't have the pure ice cream experience.
Wow, you better get to know Chris, because this is just this. This is getting into places that just are outside the realm of reality. No, to me, there's still ice cream on the menu here, right? The core of it is still there, plus burgers and fries.
Yeah, but
so I mean, it's Oh, sorry, Chris.
I guess it'd be more, in this, Marie would argue the ice cream's still there. It just might be a different flavor. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I really do not like butter pecan, and it's mostly butter pecan there, and I really miss what they used to do with strawberry.
Rum raisin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. So I mean, it's definitely, they have not made similar games. Here's a question for you, actually. Have you enjoyed the HD remakes of the old games as they come back? Like, do you replay those, or are you like, I already played that, I don't need that again?
I actually haven't replayed them because I've never had the systems that they came out on. So like I had an N64 and GameCube, and then I went to college and just didn't play games for 4 years. So I missed out pretty much on like Wii and Wii U and all that stuff. And then I was a poor starving artist, so I didn't have money until like the Switch came out. And then I was like, well, I don't care. I'm still gonna get it anyways. And then I went back and backfilled some. Like I got an old used Wii and tried playing Skyward Sword, which was horrendous for different reasons.
I wanted to talk about that too, and
I'm not a fan of that one.
I'm an apologist for that game. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. But I've seen the footage of some of the remakes, and I know that there's some quality of life stuff that they added, which is cool. I will say, like, I really think that the Ocarina of Time remake is like quite ugly. Like all of the colors are more saturated, and like his green is like green. Like it is like if you guys don't know, like I'm a 3D artist too, so like colors are important to me. So like it is like eye
searing,
punchingly green. Yeah. So it's like, man, why did you change the colors? Like it just looks like chintzier,
I would say like the original was very muted, and I felt like it was a technological limitation with the N64. Like, so I like that they made some of the colors pop. Maybe they did too much, but I don't think the N64.
Selective.
Yeah, the N64 I don't think is like the pristine envisioning of that ideal, right?
Yeah. I just thought there is overall too saturated. And then there's Wind Waker and the Wind Waker HD remake, and that one's kind of hit and miss. Like some of the cell shading, and like I have personal experience in this because like I've built the HD remake cell shader. Like I've built it from scratch several times for Reddit, so I know how it works. And in some scenarios it works really well, and in some scenarios it's like objectively uglier than the beginning one. So or the first one. So that's a mixed bag.
Yeah, that one I would prefer to play on the GameCube because I think it still holds up really well on the GameCube. It doesn't really need more.
That's like part of the genius of Nintendo is like more sophisticated does not mean it's better, Yeah. And I would say that Wind Waker has aged the best out of any Zelda game pretty much, except for maybe visually speaking, except for maybe Link to the Past, because like pixel graphics are timeless as a pretty good looking game.
Yeah, I think my personal favorite out of them is probably oh god, I forgot the name of it. Yeah, the Game Boy one, Link's Awakening.
What?
Link's Awakening.
Oh yeah.
I love Link's Awakening, the original, and the remake I was not so happy with, but I love.
Really?
Yeah, I love the original. Like the remake, I was like, it's fine. It's fine. I was like, all right, this is. But I still, after that, I had a thirst to go back to the Game Boy. And it felt so. This is the internet, but it's just like soulless. Like that is like the definition of it for me. It's just like, man,
Mm.
this game had heart, and they were doing so much with so little. And you go to this big polygon-full, colorful world, and it just felt a little kind of the way New Super Mario Brothers feels. You know, just sort of glossy.
Gotcha.
Too much gloss. Yeah. I liked the tilt shift thing, which I know was divisive. I was like, that's cool. I also was just really upset with the performance of the game. Like, it should have run at a solid frame rate, and it didn't. And it's like, come on, guys. You can patch this, right?
Yeah, I think they probably had a lot of textures going on.
Yeah.
And like some stuff about Tears of the Kingdom that is noteworthy. The game is 16 gigs. The whole game is 16 gigs. That's amazing. That's amazing.
It's crazy they fit that world in 16 gigs.
I have
massive.
I have the 2016 Doom on my Switch. 50 gigs, you know. Like, so it's amazing, and like the Ascend, even though it's ruined some stuff for me, like I think the Ascend ability is like technological marvel. Like I would not be surprised if they had a whole team of people whose only job it was to make sure you didn't like crash and get stuck on geometry when you ascended. Because you can do it so many places. It's not limited to like, oh, if you have this specific tile on a ceiling, then that means you can ascend. It's like, no, it's pretty.
I feel like that's Chris's favorite power,
or
ability.
I do love that power right now. I will say when I got to Zora's Domain, like it was transformative because I was like, all right, I know Zora's Domain. I played Breath of the Wild a lot. But now, like, I wasn't afraid, like, oh, I saw that there's a shrine at the bottom. I go to the bottom first because I can just zip up through it, and I can go floor by floor, and exploring it was so much less laborious, partially because I had already explored this place, right? I don't feel like I have to really go through every pixel of it again. But that was awesome. Like, just a very vertical place like that, I think Ascend really enhances. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And just knowing that, you can use it anywhere that you think it's probably going to work. Like, you'll find it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy. I have yet to come upon a time where you come out the top and, like, you're stuck. Like, that hasn't happened.
Never. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. It's like, I want to sort of like, where are we now? Because I feel like now we're just sort of like falling. So it's like, I think that from my position, I understand where you're coming from, Dave. You're not saying it's a bad game. It's just not hitting the Zelda vibe that you have come to associate with what you enjoy about the Zelda games. Yeah. And I understand that. I get it.
Yeah. And there's a sense of loss there too, right?
Yes, because it's like your favorite restaurant stopped making your favorite ice cream and you will never have it again. Mm-hmm. Possibly.
Yeah. One thing that I wanted to talk about that I forgot, like that's like kind of contributes to this is like all the fuse, not the fuse mechanic, the like stick stuff to other stuff mechanic, which again, technical marvel and super fun, and I would have loved it in a different IP. Like make a new IP about that, like make a Minecraft competitor, awesome, play it all the time. But like talking about like the touchy-feely stuff, like again, like Zelda's about like being a little kid alone in the forest, that you're just like picking through like ancient ruins that no one's been there in, eons, right? Like it is not about creating giant robots that shoot fire out of their penis. Like it's not. Like it cheapens the game. It cheapens the feeling of the game, like as soon as you have stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay, I get that, but I am playing this game, and it's Ultra Hand, right? And I don't make robots that shoot fire out of their penises, right? I have that choice not to do it and to use it. I mean, I don't make many vehicles unless it's necessary for like a boss fight and it's clear that they want me to do it. Mm-hmm. But I have that agency not to do it, right? And does it bother you that other people are doing it?
Kinda, yeah. Because you can't, again, like you can't unsee it, right?
All right. I've seen that image, specifically the robot
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like
Okay.
to a lesser extent, like making lightsabers and like cars and motorcycles and also feels too far away from like the like pseudo medieval feel that we started with. So yeah, and slightly less. I'm kind of curious what Chris thinks. Does Zelda feel like it's getting more and more Japanese in a weird way as the series goes on? Like
Yeah. Keep explain.
like for instance, like I was playing Breath of the Wild and like, oh, like there's like a Lolacan Pura. That's weird. And then the other guy, he's like a super smart guy with a wife who's like much younger on him and than him and like dotes on him. Like, oh, this feels weird. And then like, okay, now there's just like straight up gachapon machine. Like it just feels like more. Yeah, like feels. I feel like I'm a weeb. Like I watched a ton of anime in college. Like I've read manga. I've been to Japan multiple times, so like I'm familiar with Japanese pop culture, and like I see, yeah, like I see like that kind of stuff creeping in more.
That's an interesting point. I hadn't noticed like there is a lot of Japanese specific stuff, like especially with motifs, and I think I remember reading that they specifically tried to make it more Eastern in the recent games because the older games they're like, oh, we're pulling a lot from European sort of like just like their Middle Ages, and they're like, you know what? I
Mhm.
think why don't we pull from our like locale a little bit more and try to make it a little bit different because it seems like lots of games lean into that Western
Yeah.
fantasy, and so they pulled it through. And I think just the fact that there's so much content, so much more writing in this game, and it's being
Mhm.
written by people who are in that location, in that culture, I guess it makes sense that it would be pulled in more. But yeah, it's a different feel for sure. Although I will
Yeah.
say, like, my favorite, I don't know, I haven't met anyone else who've encountered this, but there is a particular horse stable where there's a whole bunch of dudes in their underwear, and they're like,
I haven't seen it.
Princess Zelda told us that we must go forth and explore in our underpants. And there's a bunch of
Mhm.
dudes like doing like punches in the air in their underpants, and I was like, this is hysterical because they misunderstood something that Zelda had told them. And
Mhm.
so other people around, like, there's a lot of weird guys in their underwear, like dancing around, and like, I don't know how I feel about that. These guys got to chill out. And I'm just like, this is another example of just like one of those corners you turn, and there's something that is nowhere else in any other video game, and
Mhm.
there it is. And there's a little
Yeah.
quest with them I haven't done yet, but I'm just like, these guys are awesome.
And to be clear, I'm not talking about like there's like more like pseudo Shinto like shrines and like Tori and like
Mhm.
that's not the Japanese influence I'm talking about. I'm talking about like the more modern day
Yeah, you
Japanese
talk about like
influence.
Oh, I see.
Um,
weeb culture specific.
like notice me, senpai, and they'll like I'm gonna follow you, but like not because I like you or anything. Just like
Baka.
very
Oh.
Japanese. Yeah, baka. Yeah, like very kind of Japanese, uh, tropey kind of
Well,
stuff
I
like
I will
that.
be totally in agreement with you when you can get a body pillow in the game. That's yeah. That'll be too far.
It's probably in there. It's
It
probably
might
in
be
there
in there, man.
somewhere.
There's a lot of Hyrule. Customizable body pillow. You can pick any character.
Oh
Oh, it would
yeah.
go right in there.
Aha.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah.
But no, yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't
So
I've delved in it more. You've seen more than I have. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, now now all this talking about the game. To be clear,
I know.
I want to play it right now. I want to go in there and
I want
dive
to play
in.
it. Yes, I would love to play.
just out of curiosity though, would you guys be interested in a game that like again, this game took like how long has it been developed for? I want to say seven
Yeah, it's been
years.
6 or 7 years.
Maybe even more if there was a little bit of parallel development on like Breath of the Wild. So it's like I just wonder too, like, what if the development was like 3 years and the game was like a quarter as big and twice as dense? Um, Yeah. Yeah.
Quarters big and
I
twice as
wonder.
dense.
Yeah, or you know whatever I mean.
Yeah.
Like just a smaller, more curated, like excellent experience.
Well, I think what you're arguing for there is just more of a traditional more linear Zelda game, which is the whole point of the discussion. I would argue that perhaps Breath of the Wild was like Tears of the Kingdom is that to Breath of the Wild. Like it is a denser game, not necessarily like geographically bigger, except for the fact that now there's an underworld and an overworld.
Yeah.
But even on any single plane, there's more going on than there was in the first game.
So
Yeah.
much game. It's far denser as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Far denser with things that are unique too. Like,
yes,
it's like, oh, here's a character who's totally unique with totally unique dialogue, wanting me to do something that isn't just hitting 3 apples off of trees again, right?
yeah. Fetch quest. You know, like they're more complex things. Yeah.
So I just think about like how great of a curated experience, like how much higher the highs could be if the devs could focus and limit scope.
Well, then you would get Skyward Sword. Yeah, because that is in many ways what you're talking about structurally. It was one of the most, I guess, restrictive Zelda games. You had to warp to like 4 independent areas, and they were all very curated, very well scripted. Lots of density in those. I guess the dungeons. I think the dungeons in that games are some of the best in Zelda, honestly. And especially like the storytelling in that, like there are characters with dialogue, with cutscenes through the whole thing. That's Skyward Sword. Just do that in HD.
Yeah, I think for me there was the sword combat being tied to motion controls, and I also really disliked the art direction in that game. Like I felt it was very immature. Like everything looked more kiddie, you know.
Man, Nintendo
so
makes
I
kiddie
felt
games.
kind of. I mean, there's a way to do it where it's like there's a way to make something cute without making it look immature.
Would you say that Wind Waker did it well?
Yeah, Wind Waker did it much better, I think.
I gotta pull up some images, but go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, it was interesting because it was almost it had a painterly quality to it. A lot of the textures had no other way to say it, but they were textured like a paint, and there's almost an impressionist feeling to the game, but at the same time a cartoony impressionist. So I could definitely see that rubbing someone the wrong way. I for one like really enjoyed the motion control sword. Like I thought that was really fun. And especially like with lobbing bombs, the fact that you could like bowl bombs, I thought that was awesome. And the game did great use of that. But I understand, like, if you don't want to, sometimes you want to play a video game and you just want to sit on the couch and just like chill out for hours. And it was not that for sure. Yeah. But
I'm looking.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I'm on mute because my son just came. Hey, bud. Daddy. We're on a podcast right now talking about Link.
Daddy.
Yeah?
Where is Ollie?
Oh, he's in the room, buddy. Do you like Link?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you like Big Link or Little Link better?
Both of them.
Both of them. They're both pretty cool.
Ask him if he feels like Tears of the Kingdom is a true Zelda game and it belongs within the IP.
In this household, in the Carr household, we have a stance on Zelda.
Every single person in this home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna start you off with Zelda 1. Yeah. Okay, can you go get a snack from Lala, please?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Oh.
Daddy, what's this?
Bye.
That was adorable, by the way.
This is a cookie wrapper.
I'm glad we got 2 special guests today.
Yeah, you're indoctrinating him into your viewpoints.
We could do a quick pivot too. So he's 3.
Daddy.
Yeah. Hold on, I'm talking, but
Daddy.
can we please talk?
Daddy.
It's okay. It's okay.
So we just started playing video games because I noticed that
Daddy.
he's way more. Yes, bud.
Daddy.
What's up?
Yes, bud.
Um,
Do you want to say goodbye? Ooh, treat, yummy. Uh, his daycare is on vacation today and all of next week. So Christ help me. But yeah, like I noticed, like when the TV or YouTube is on, like the lights just go out and he's a zombie.
Yeah.
But when he watches me play games, he's like very like in it and like invested in telling me what to do. So we're trying to like phase out that stuff and like play more games together. So I don't know if that's your experience, Chris, but we started Mario Kart, which is super great because like he can hold the one Joy-Con and just press the button to go, and then I hold the other one and steer. And we like,
yeah, that's almost like a double dash
which course
thing
do you
going
want?
on.
Yeah. It's like, which course do you want to do? He's like, oh, I do the one with the subway. It's like, oh, okay.
No, I would similar mentality. I think with kids, engaging them with active media. Of if you're gonna do media, do active. Yeah, because you sit down a kid with YouTube, I kind of hate it. They go blank and they just the way YouTube just goes to the next video. They will just sit there for hours. It's like no, that's enough for today. We gotta get outside. We gotta read. We gotta play a game together.
Do something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, so I'm right there with you. And especially like sometimes they'll get into games that are trash games, and I'll be like, don't play the trash game.
Like, what's a trash game?
All right. So I don't know what they make them with now, but it used to be, Flash games in the browser that are like knockoff IP, help pregnant Elsa cure her foot fungus.
Oh, yeah, that's stuff.
Yeah, that sort of stuff. Yeah. So I think I'm within my rights to call that trash games.
I think so. I think we've talked about this on the podcast before. Like, why are these Disney's princesses always pregnant?
Oh, yeah. They're super pregnant.
It's very bizarre in these Flash games that Chris has encountered. It's very bizarre.
Yeah. So that stuff, like, and there's this whole site you may encounter in the future, Dave, Poki.com, Poki. Don't encounter it. It's just filled with browser games like that. And kids through school, they will find it and they will want to play. And I'm like, that's great. But hey, man, I got like 1,000 awesome games. Like, you want me to help you jump in? And sometimes they're into it.
Like a real game.
But
one thing I kind of wonder about is like, because my parents didn't play games, right? And so when I was growing up, like you got games one at a time, right? Have you ever gotten like 3 games for Christmas and then you never really gotten invested in any one of them? But if you only got 1 game for Christmas, like that was it, and it stuck to you.
Story.
So I sometimes wonder, like, okay, like he has a huge catalog of games to go through. Is he going to have that same 3 games on Christmas mentality?
He definitely won't. Media is different now in general. I think even, if you went back to like, all right, I didn't have a ton of money as a kid and my family got me one thing. Like even now, like there's so much free stuff. If you just have access to the internet, this is something I think that kids are going to have to contend with in a way we didn't. Just the glut of media that is you can get for free, basically. And I think that does terrible things to attention spans. Now we're getting into like all kinds of stuff, but like the saddest thing I saw, like without someone actually being harmed actively, went to a diner in Philly, and there's a family of 4 sitting next to us, and all 4 of them have their phones, and they're all staring at their phones. None of them said a single word to each other for the entirety of a breakfast. I was there, and I'm sitting with my kids, and we're, laughing, talking. I'm just watching them. The check comes, they go. They have an entire meal without looking at each other. And I was like, this is so depressing.
Yeah.
I feel like you guys can really align. Like, look, I agree that's depressing, but you guys are going to have a lot of old man yell at clouds things that you can align on for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I agree. That is terrible. But I'm saying, if you guys just ever want to sit down and talk about the destruction of society through technology. Yeah, I think you guys have a really good time with that.
I definitely. I think we have some
Yeah.
similar wavelengths on that. But I also think, in general, like we felt this also growing up. Like it got to a point where it's like, hey, maybe we're getting more in our brains with the internet than human beings can physically handle, right? Just like,
Yes.
you get stuck down a wiki hole and you're following it forever, and you're like, hey, I found some interesting things, but oh god, it's Tuesday now, you know?
Yes. I have said to other people before, I know too many things. And I know it's like, oh, well, Socrates knew that he did what he didn't know everything. You know, wow, that's great. Good job, old man. Whatever. Knowing things is not necessarily good either. Like, just like, okay, it's okay to acknowledge it. I did not need to know about cannibalism on this one particular island at one point. So yes, I agree.
Yeah.
As much as I embrace technology, there is just too much stuff. And I recently learned that the brain, as you get older, doesn't forget things. It's just trying to work with all of the information it has stored and is getting slowed down by it.
No.
So yeah, try to forget some stuff.
Yeah.
Don't learn as much.
And I think there's a really specific shift between consuming things and interacting and making stuff, right? And I feel like it's a hard switch that gets harder for me to flip as I grow into this, modern world. And me, like, I'm insular. Like, Marie, I don't want to touch a phone as much as possible. But even without a phone, there's so much stuff. And it's easy to just be like, all right, gonna Netflix all night long, man. And I used to, there's times like, well, you doodle on the sidelines, you draw things, you make things, and like, there's so many ways to consume and fewer ways it feels to engage people. Like, that's the reason, like, my kids, they love Minecraft. And I'm fine with them playing Minecraft a long time because they're like, Dad, look, I made a village, I made a house, look at the things I'm putting in. I'm like, this is awesome. I want to encourage that. So if you're making that part of your brain work, play Minecraft all you want. There's no limits. But
yeah, Redstone engineering, my God.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
But
that level of intelligence is
if you're sitting there on kids' YouTube and you're just letting things flow, like moving, like, all right, dude, that's 1 hour, and you got that, and then we got to move on. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, well, before we end that, I will say this is a plug for a podcast that I am no way associated with. Ben and I recently found a YouTube channel called Tasting History, and with Max
I've
Miller.
seen that.
It's actually quite lovely. The accents could go in our opinion, but this fella, he like looks up old recipes from like the Middle Ages, ancient Greece, ancient Korea, and stuff like that, and then tries to make them modern day and then taste them. And then as like, they're usually pretty simple recipes. He puts all the stuff together, and then while they're waiting for it to cook, he gives you a history lesson about like, the person who wrote this recipe book, like this Korean woman who had like at least 9 or 10 kids, and one of the first Korean women to learn to write, and she taught herself all of these things. And that's some quality content, and it's really enjoyable to learn
Cool.
that way.
So what's the name of that podcast again?
It's Tasting History with Max Miller.
That's a good name.
Yeah, wonderful. So there is good content out there, but most of it, yes, I agree.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
There's a glut of good content and a glut of bad content.
There's a glut of
There's
everything.
There's just too much.
There's much, yes.
It's too much, man.
So next time, let's talk about Dark Souls.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I actually got some hot takes on Dark Souls, so I would love to.
I have one take. I don't want to get kicked in the crotch more than once, so I'm just going to stop playing this game. Why do I keep coming back for abuse? But yeah, that's another discussion.
Yeah. Well, this was awesome. Thank you so much, Dave, for coming on. Perhaps we'll have you on again in the future if your schedule allows.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll be halfway through the game. Zelda.
Yeah, I look forward to getting halfway through. I am maybe 5%. Not even. No, there's no way.
I don't know. I feel like there's no way you can get through this game. There's too much stuff. Like, how could you ever? Anyway.
But yeah,
good game, guys.
Good game. Thanks everyone for watching, and we will see you most likely next week.
Bye.
Bye.